Welcome back to the second semester of college roller hockey. We haven't talked to you guys for a while. It's good to be back. I'm Kevin Smith, joined by Ian Prescott, and we are NCRHA Coast to Coast, bringing you a recap of the first semester, a little bit of a preview of the second semester for D1. This is the D1 show. We will be doing some D2 and D3 stuff in another episode, as well as bringing you rankings and hopefully a lot more this semester as we've stepped up our coast to coast team and have added quite a few staff members to do everything from writing blogs to video production, some more podcast stuff. And it should be a really exciting semester, both on and off the court. We're going to bring Ian on here in a second, but I just want to remind you that we still do have some availabilities and openings if you're interested in joining the team, whether you're a marketing major and trying to get some marketing experience, or you'd like to work on some broadcast journalism stuff, everything from filming video to editing. There's quite a bit that we can get you involved with and hopefully get you some experience that you can take on into the real world and have some fun covering college roller hockey all at the same time. So if you're interested in that, feel free to visit our website, which is Coast to Coast, COAST 0 or O, letter O, coast, .wix.com/NCRHA. We'll post that. That link's available on our Twitter as well, twitter.com/NCRHA_C2C. Or feel free to tweet us, whatever your preferred method of communication is. We can get you involved and hopefully bring you guys some extra coverage this season. We're going to bring in Ian here, who has moved to the East Coast and will tell us a little bit about that, moved back to the East Coast rather. And we can try to get him going here. Let's see. All right, Ian, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing well. Been back on the East Coast since, what is it? August? Yeah, since August. Moved to the less sunny Syracuse from Tucson, Arizona. So drove across country, got to see some of the sights. It's been pretty good, but back in the ECRHA now, coaching again. But it's been a bit of a wild ride, but it's good that we can get back to the original idea of coast to coast, as I broadcast from the East Coast and you broadcast from the West.
Yeah, it's good to have those different perspectives, and that's something that we're really excited about, being able to add some more guys to the team that, the last year or two we haven't really had since kind of back in the day when we had coverage in the Southeast and in Michigan with Kyle Jones. So we're really excited about that. There's quite a bit that's happened this season already, and there's so much to go over. Where do you want to start in D1? Kind of just a little bit of a recap of the first semester and just kind of where some of these regions are in comparison to last year.
Yeah, I think you and I were talking about it, in our little conference call that we had. It's a lot more of the same that we saw from last year. Teams that seem to be, kind of settled into the positions where they are across the country. That they were last year. Newman's still sitting on top of the East. You got Lindenwood undefeated in the Great Plains. Michigan State kind of continuing their dominance over the Midwest. Colorado Springs, the only team in competition out in the Rocky Mountain. Southeast is Florida Gulf Coast and Kennesaw neck and neck once again. UNLV and Arizona State doing their thing in the West, but only real new kind of development where we're not used to seeing is the success Texas Tech has had in the Southwest, and then also the success that Farmingdale, a team that was in D2 last year, is having in D1 of the ECRHA, and we'll talk about them a lot coming forward in the show.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's, I think, important to make sure that we kind of go over the rankings from the first semester. We release these rankings in the middle end of November, November 20th. And we've had a few events since then, including the interregional just a weekend ago in Pittsburgh, and we'll touch on that as well. just as Ian said, a lot of the same in terms of D1, not a whole lot of change in terms of the top, the cream of the crop and the top teams. Cal Poly has fallen off a little bit in comparison to last year. But if you take a look at the top 10 from our rankings earlier, which in order, you had Newman, Lindenwood, UNLV, ASU, Michigan State were your top 5. UMSL, Kennesaw, Farmingdale, Bethel, and UCCS made up 6 through 10. There's not a whole lot of movement. Farmingdale will probably end up moving up in that group. But it's been a very similar year in terms of the teams that have been able to compete, I think, for a national championship in comparison to last year. Let's talk about the interregional, and then we can go into kind of our top teams from are going into this next semester and who we expect to compete for a national championship. What were your thoughts from the interregional?
Yeah, the NCRHA Challenge Cup was kind of a hodgepodge. I think you had 2 separate pools. One pool was Eastern Michigan, Rowan, Westchester, and Rhode Island, and then the other pool was Lindenwood, Newman, Farmingdale, and Temple. Kind of what we had expected coming out of the pools was that Rhode Island might kind of get their stride in Pool B. If you do remember, Rhode Island went 8-10 last year and managed to go to nationals based on the fact that they had quite a good playoff run going towards the end of the year and was able to get to the regional championship game where they eventually fell to Newman. So we expected a little bit out of them, but what ended up happening was Eastern Michigan and Rowan ended up taking the majority of the games in that bracket. In that pool. Eastern Michigan went 3-0, Rowan went 2-1, Westchester 1-0-2, and then Rhode Island lost out every game that they played. And then in Pool A, we saw a couple of heavyweight battles between Lindenwood and Newman, and then Farmingdale was there, and then Temple was placed into that pool. A good friend of the show, Steven Jastro, who's a goalie for Temple. I think what was kind of exciting was you saw a close game between Temple and Lindenwood in the first game of the day, where Temple only lost to Lindenwood 5-3 behind some strong goaltending by Jastro in that game, but it turned out that Lindenwood would be far too much for them.
And Temple, too, interesting to note going into this tournament, pretty much I think they went in with 5 skaters, so not a whole lot of depth for them going into a weekend and kind of holding their own, it seemed, at times, including that close one against Lindenwood. Before we kind of talk about the last end of the tournament and the brackets and how that all played out, including a pretty big upset, how about Eastern Michigan, and what are their results out in Pittsburgh mean for the NCRHL as a team that's really struggled in the regular season out in Michigan to go out and do pretty well against a lot of the middle of the road ECRHA teams?
Well, you look at it, and you have Eastern Michigan, who's 2-6 on the season. They've only scored 23 goals in the Midwest, so they've struggled against the higher echelon teams, which are Grand Valley and Michigan State out there. What you see here is that perhaps the middle to the bottom end of the Midwest might be a little bit more talented to the bottom end of the Eastern the ECRHA. I think it's without a doubt that Westchester has been pretty rough this season. They've gone through some real hard growing pains this last year. Rhode Island as well. They're a pretty up and down team. They get caught up in the run and gun a little bit. They lack composure at key moments of games and tend to lose their edge, which happened in that Eastern Michigan game where they lost 9-7. They got into a shootout, which is something that they didn't want. But Eastern Michigan, I mean, they did the job that they had to do. They beat Westchester 6-5 in an OT game. It's a lot of difficult things, but to kind of measure out, they also beat Temple later on in the competition 5-2, but that probably has a lot to do with the fact that they only had 5 skaters that year, or not that year, excuse me, that event. So I think if Eastern Michigan came and they played these teams again, we might see some of the results change. But I don't know if this definitively puts the NCRHL above the ECRHA, but it definitely showed Eastern Michigan stepping in the right direction.
Yeah, good for those guys to have a good weekend and go out there and get a few W's under their belt. And yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that it's really that reflective of matching the regions up. It's a bummer that Michigan State didn't make it out for that event. That definitely would have been a good test for them and a good way to kind of weigh the top echelon or the higher end MCRHL teams, as well as Grand Valley State. Definitely another team that it would have been good to see those guys out there. So we'll have to wait and see how some of the MCRHL plays out. But as mentioned earlier, we did have a pretty big upset in Pittsburgh. Let's touch on that. Farmingdale with a pretty big upset win over Lindenwood.
Yeah, 5-4 in overtime. I think what was remarkable about the win was after how badly they got it handed to them in the pool play, where they lost 7-0 to Lindenwood earlier in the game. But I think what happened is what you kind of see happen with this Farmingdale team is their goaltending can keep them in just about any game. And the goaltending was ultimately what prevailed in the end, going all the way to the shootout where Christopher Sharkey ended up scoring the game-winning goal in the shootout. But essentially, this Farmingdale team is pretty fast. They're pretty composed. They're well coached. They know what to do on the D side of the puck. They can man up with most teams in the league. They even gave Newman a little bit of a struggle earlier in the year, but I think really what happens is you have to have one of these kind of games where the stars align, I think, in order for the team like Farmingdale to top a Newman University or a Lindenwood University, a lot of things need to happen. You have to have, Muccio Shrimp needs to have has to have a really good game. They have to get some solid goaltending out of him. They need to get some secondary scoring out of guys like people like Sharkey and Tardino, which they got.
You just can't make mistakes with the puck, right? Like you got to have good puck possession and score on your opportunities and make sure you just don't have those breakdowns. Like against a team like Newman or Lindenwood, it's like you just can't make mistakes, because if you make mistakes, whether it's in the box, we saw that earlier in the season. You alluded to the Newman Farmingdale game that Farmingdale, it was a close one earlier in the season when they faced off against Newman. Now, when they played them in Pittsburgh, not exactly the same deal. Newman ended up winning in the championship 8-0. But earlier in the season, there was they had a 6-3 game in the pool play in Pittsburgh. But earlier in the year, they lost 9-5, and that was a game that I believe was close up until the last couple minutes, and then in the third, it was actually 5-5. And then a couple power play goals by Newman and a couple goals in the last minute or two ended up giving Newman the 9-5 win. But same deal in that game. Like they played them close for 2.5 periods, and then in the third, it's 5-5 with 6 minutes left or whatever. They take 2 penalties, and Newman gets 2 quick ones on the power play. Like you can't take penalties against a team like that. Their power play is going to beat you every time. So ultimately, like to beat a team like that, if you're kind of either a second tier team or even a 3 through 5 team like UNLV or ASU, you're going to have to play one of your best games and not make those mistakes to be able to get a win against a Lindenwood or a Newman, right?
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to, and obviously this comes from my own opinions and coaching and things like that, excuse me, is that when you go into those games, you have to understand that there is a bit of, of a mountain that you have to climb to get into this game. But more so than that, you have to understand what system you're going to play, and you have to 100% buy into that system. Whether that system is you're going to man up with them full rank, if you're going to play a 1-1-2, if you're going to play a 1-2-1, if you're going to play a box, if you're going to play a 1-3, whatever it takes, you have to stick with it. Even when you go down by one early, or you get up by one, a big thing that happens, is that a lot of teams, when they play a certain way and they either see it pay off or don't pay off in the first period, they fall apart. And that's something that can't happen. You have to stay true to the way that you want to play, because a lot of teams, they might have fallen apart in that third period, when Farmingdale ended up having to score, 11 minutes and 29 seconds into, 30 seconds left in the game, they had to tie it up. And a lot of other teams fall apart from that, because as soon as Lindenwood pulls ahead, it says, oh, here we go, that was our chance, we blew it, that kind of stuff. So you have to stay true to your system. You have to stay true to the way that you want to play. And sometimes it pays off. And I think it paid off in this case for Farmingdale. And we look forward to seeing these teams possibly match up down the road.
I think conversely, it's important to add too that part of that not falling apart isn't necessarily just playing, the same system for 3 periods, but being able to adjust and make those in-game adjustments if needed, and having a group of guys that can buy into that and make those adjustments, because as we all know, the top teams, the cream of the crop, are able to make those adjustments and see how you're playing and then alter their attack or their defense or forecheck or breakout or whatever, once they kind of see your style of play. That's kind of what we see a lot of the time when we see a team play the same opponent twice in a weekend.
Right.
For example, Farmingdale played Newman in a close game, the first game of Pittsburgh, and then Newman ends up beating them 8-0 in the second game in the championship. I'm sure that Lindenwood game took out a lot of the gas from Farmingdale, but what I'm getting at is, I think it's important to obviously know the system you're going to go into the game with, and then if needed, if you need to make an adjustment, being able to make that adjustment without getting rattled, being able to keep your composure, is definitely another, I think, big indicator of teams that can really contend for national championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I would completely agree with that.
And you mentioned a lot of good strategies, and we'll definitely get more into that as the season goes on and do some more of, I think, one of your favorites, the Coach's Corner. Definitely something that it's good to have you on the staff to be able to add that perspective. And roller hockey is a very interesting sport with when it comes to strategies and coaching and stuff like that. Not a whole lot of resources out there, so it's good to have somebody that knows what they're talking about and can add that insight, and hopefully help out some these NCRHA teams as they look to build their programs and stuff. But we're gonna kind of move on to the top teams in D1, and then talk about some of the players in goaltending and a couple of other teams to watch and things that have caught our eye this semester. Let's talk about the top teams, your contenders, who you're watching this semester, and who you expect to be able to make a run when we get to Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Cedar Rapids, right? Okay. I definitely, somebody said I know people have said Grand Rapids here. We've heard a bunch of different random
There's a lot of
misnomers or mistakes.
It gets confusing, huh?
A lot of Cedars and a lot of Rapids. Just make sure that they're together.
Yes.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the home of the USHL Cedar Rapids Rough Riders. So that'll be cool, getting to play in a building like that and getting to play at a top-notch junior facility. So should be a lot of fun when we get out there. But who are the teams that you're watching to make a run in Cedar Rapids?
I think we mentioned 2 of them already. Obviously, a lot of people are expecting the repeat between Lindenwood University and Newman University. A lot of teams are expecting that to be the matchup that'll end up in the championship game. I think, when you think about Newman, you look at how deep their roster is. You look at, they're running about 12 guys this year. They're getting some real help on in secondary scoring, which is one of the biggest things is in my mind, as a coach, is you don't have to continually rely on the three-headed monster of Crafty, Martino, and Fox. You can rely on some leadership out of Humans. You can rely on some secondary scoring out of Jones and Carr and O'Shaughnessy and everything like that. And then additionally, I think that same thing's kind of happening over in Lindenwood, where you're not just worrying about when you come into this game, you're not just thinking about Anthony Arace and Robert Berman, but you're really thinking about some people that can hurt you on the other end. Trevor Borgia and Jalen Krogman, of course. It's something that it makes it hard not to want to pick these two teams because they're well coached, because of the of their stature in the league and everything like that. But I think that there are, whenever you think about tiering in this league, when you think it's like who's your tier 1 teams, who's your tier 2 teams, when you're looking at D1, I think we have a pair of pretty solid teams out in the West in UNLV and Arizona State. And you know a lot more about UNLV than I do this year. I mean, I watched a lot of UNLV the prior year, but maybe you might want to be able to chime in on those guys.
Yeah, and we'll get to the West in a second. I kind of want to touch on Lindenwood and Newman for a second, and as you kind of mentioned, they're the top two. So I think it's important to kind of go into their strengths a little bit and some of their guys to watch out for. If we start with Newman, it's been an interesting, kind of off season for those guys and who they've been able to add and pick up. They got Aiden Board from Bethel, which is a huge pickup. He was at Bethel last year, and to be able to add him to their roster, definitely something worth noting, as well as Andy Zubak and a couple other guys that they brought in. They've had some D3 guys that have been able to make the jump, Jack Phelan, among others. So Newman should be a really strong team and a lot of depth, even though they did lose a few guys from last year. Being able to pick up guys like Board and Zubak, and then being able to move some of these D3 guys up just shows the depth of the program and just the things that Lee Strophe's been able to do there. Good friend of Coast to Coast. So it's good to see those guys doing well. Or and I want to correct myself, Sean Phelan, not Jack. That's his brother, I believe. So Newman's been doing really well. There was one game that we did kind of leave out from the interregional, and that was Lindenwood beating Newman 4-3. So even though Newman ended up winning the tournament, Newman doesn't leave Pittsburgh unscathed and does get their first loss of the season. So, I think that shows that this really can be won by, more than just one team this year. And a lot of it's going to come down to matchups and stuff. We talk about Lindenwood now, and they've had a few guys, a few big pickups themselves. Jacob Tarowski, who's a freshman, he's from Michigan. He's had a really good year for them, putting up points consistently. He's actually their leading scorer. Not bad for a freshman to come in and have that kind of impact. Another big ad for them was Cody Page, who is from California, Southern California. He's a guy that I've had the privilege of playing with the Outcasts organization, and he's a really, really good offensive D-man. He moves the puck well. He's one of the fastest skaters that I've ever played with. When he gets the wheels going, it's tough to shut him down. Him and Tarowski, both smaller guys, but can really get the wheels going, which is a little different than what you normally see with Lindenwood, who generally have some of the bigger bodies and can handle you pretty well physically. But, you look at their top guys, and you have Tarowski, Arace, and Page in terms of points towards the top, all smaller guys. So their style is a little bit different, I would say. They're still more of a puck control team, but they can definitely burn you. And obviously Jalen Krogman's big on D for them. They've got a good team. It'll be interesting to see kind of where the goaltending goes and who ends up getting games down the stretch. Obviously, Kevin Dwyer in net is huge for them, and having that backstop, one of the top goalies in the league, arguably number one for sure. So Lindenwood should be able to obviously compete, as mentioned. Same with Newman. If you want to talk about out west, you've got UNLV and ASU. UNLV is very similar to the UNLV of the past. Not a lot has really changed there. They'll grind you out. They'll play a physical game against you. Andrew Tamura is still there, as well as Austin Shannon, and those are two guys that put up the points for them. Darren Corsatea, who was a pickup last season for them, has continued his scoring abilities, and he's a big guy, big power forward that can hurt you and put up some points. Cody Williams was a pickup last season that they had. He has only played in a few games for them this season. I know he's on the ice hockey team as well as a lot of these other guys are. So it'll be interesting to see if they have any second semester additions. I can't say for sure if they will or not. But with a top four consisting of Tamura, Shannon, Corsatea, and Williams, although I know that they don't necessarily play those guys all together, and they do mix it up a little bit. That's definitely a top four that can skate with just about anybody in the league, and they'll grind you out. They'll play you physically, and that's something that generally works to their advantage, but also can end up putting them in the box a little bit, and that can hurt UNLV. Terry Martin in goal is huge for them. One of the best goalies in the league, no doubt. And he will continue to keep them in games when they do struggle, which generally they don't struggle too often. They have had some close games this season, including their only loss was to ASU 8-5 in Vegas. But they beat ASU in San Jose earlier in the season 7-3. So this weekend will be interesting. They'll face ASU twice, and they'll face Long Beach State twice out in Queen Creek, Arizona. So that'll be pretty cool to see. And over at the Barney Family Sports Complex, great facility out there in Arizona. So those are a couple of games to watch this weekend. Touching on ASU, they're obviously another top team, kind of rounding out our top four, Newman, Lindenwood, UNLV, and then ASU. Guys to watch on ASU, Ryan Codden for sure, I think is a very dynamic player. He's a big guy, big body, plays defense. He's out there on penalty kills. He's out there on the power play. He's got a bomb for a shot. Definitely not one you want to step in front of unless you're prepared to, eat one and maybe leave with a couple bruises after the game. And, there's definitely a lot of depth this season, this semester. ASU adds Jamie Haveman, who is a guy that's made a lot of impact playing with Outcast as well as over in the AIHL a little bit out in Arizona. And he's probably one of the most underrated players that I've personally ever played with. Not a name that as many people know as some of the bigger names in the league and in roller hockey, but I think he's probably one of the most consistent two-way players that just doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And so he'll be a really big addition for ASU, but obviously Ryan Doyle, Nick Spinasana, Ryan Codden, as well as Wes Fry, who made the transition last year to roller. This is his second season playing roller hockey, and he's really shown how much more comfortable he is playing on wheels. And it'll be interesting to see ASU as well as Braxton Schultz, and another really, really good goalie in the WCRHL. So ASU, I think, can definitely contend and make a little bit of a run this year as well.
Yeah, I think so. As we've talked about each of these individual teams and all their positives and why they're contenders and why they might make deep runs into the national championship scene, and most likely will each be in Pool A and Pool B respectively. some of the things that we're looking at that might be troubling them as they get along during the year. I think Lindenwood, as we said, their top scorers are all beginning to become some of the smaller players on the team, and I wonder if Lindenwood felt that they were beat by Newman mostly in part to Newman's speed. And they're looking to recruit and looking to reach out to find players that can kind of match up with Newman's speed so they can meet them, coming through the neutral zone, coming into the offensive zone and carry that play in that way. So I wonder when the going gets tough, what kind of Lindenwood we're going to see. Are we going to see a Lindenwood that's going to play physical, play puck possession? Or are we going to see a Lindenwood that's really going to try to push the tempo, or try and match up with teams in a way that is going to require those smaller guys like Tarowski and Cody Page to match up with the better end people on the top players on other teams, which is a lot to ask from your first year players. So I think that's something that we can worry about with Lindenwood, because these are two different types. If you get caught playing in the middle between, playing like a UNLV where it's a bunch of meat shields out there, a bunch of guys who are going out there and playing grindy hockey, or if you're going to go up against a Newman University, which is just all speed, all the time, up tempo, let's go rush the puck and play with some composure. If you get caught playing in between against a team that plays all that one way, you might end up getting beat up because of it, or you might end up not knowing exactly what way you're going to try and get into those games. So that's something
Right,
out of
right.
Yeah, I think
that's important for sure.
Yeah,
Oh no, yeah, I think that's big. Go ahead.
yeah, and I think with Newman, so we have this Newman team that's a lot deeper. You have DiMartino, who's won 2 NCRHA golds in the pro division. You have Shane Fox, who played overseas for the Team USA last year. Tyler Kraft, who's playing for the Delco Demons again this year. He's also played on that Black Ice team that's been doing so well. Same with Mike Machinsky, who's really been their starter all year and really been their most their big stalwart in the back of the net. But the big thing is, Joe D'Angelo Antonio hasn't played a game this season. We haven't seen him in any action this season. He was a big reason and a big addition to the team last year that led them to winning a national championship. And then additionally, you lose Nick Allison, you lose AJ Hinger. Those are 2 guys who I think have been the identity of Newman University for the last 2 years, 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years. Since they made that jump to D1, it's been 71 and 73, running the tempo, running the game, puck management, scoring the big goals. I mean, if you look back to last year's team in that national championship game, who was providing the offense for the Newman Knights in that 4-3 win? Nick Allison had a goal and an assist. Anthony Hinger, their star 2 and 3 are Allison and Hinger. So it's really going to fall onto Kraft and Humans, and also DiMartino to really lead this team. And once again, I mean, it's their 3rd and 4th years, and that's what's expected for you to step up into those positions. Same with Shane Fox, to step up into those positions and really make a difference. But is it too much to ask? Who knows? So we'll see what happens. And hopefully Machinsky can carry his play on through. He wasn't at the Challenge Cup for the NCRHA Challenge Cup, which, they had their D3 goalie who transferred from Missouri to Newman play for them that weekend. So that's something to look into as well. I think when you look at the 2 last teams that we were talking about, and then I'll let you chime in your 2 cents as well. UNLV, basically the same team that they've been for quite a while. They have a lot of the same makeup, if you will, of teams in the past, with the exception of having the Rabonis that aren't there. They're basically the same team that went to that national championship against Bethel, so many years ago, in terms of actual physical makeup and play style. My question is, UNLV has been in these positions where they get very far, Final Four. They're competing with teams, but once they have to go to that next level, once they have to beat a Newman University, or they have to beat a Lindenwood University, aside from the year that they went to the national championship, they haven't really been able to do that. They haven't beaten Newman, they haven't beaten Lindenwood just yet. They haven't gotten over that hump at nationals. They did beat Lindenwood 1 year ago in Colorado Springs, but I wonder if something needs to change for UNLV, or if they really need a career-making game out of Terry Martin, which I don't know that he's had yet. He's been outperformed in big games before. He's been outperformed by Machinsky 2 years ago in Aston. He was outperformed by Dwyer the year after in Missouri and Independence, and then in the regional championship game that they lost to, or it's not last year, excuse me. Oh, and yes, in the semifinal game, he was outperformed by Arizona State's goaltender Dietrich. So I wonder if Terry Martin's going to have the ability to step up into that position and really make something happen for UNLV going forward. And then lastly,
I think he has the ability to. I mean, he's had a few really good games. Like last year in the pool play against Newman, they lost 3-2, and he made 29 saves or so around there. So I mean, it's not like you can't keep them in games. The Lindenwood game, they were outshot 36-19, which just kind of shows how Lindenwood dominated the possession. And just played a really strong game. It is tough when you're facing top-end teams that also have top-end goaltending, for sure. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. Like he might have to have one of those birthday games, or one of those, kind of like you said, career-making games to get a win over these guys. I think it also is. It's just gonna have to be when UNLV gets out to an early lead. It's tough to play against them because they get in your head. They play physically and they try to grind you out. If they can do all those things and get really strong goaltending along the way, then I think that they're capable of doing it for sure. But yeah, that's going to be their challenge.
Right.
How about ASU?
Oh yeah, I was just to chime in back on that point. I mean, you think back, it's like Travis Barrett had that career-making game against Lindenwood back in 2012 when they were in Utah. Like I'm not, and I would say Travis and Terry are on the same kind of level of prolificness in UNLV history as goaltenders, but I don't know if he has or not necessarily has the ability, but has that same extra step that'll take him to that point. And I hope he does, because that's something that I would love to see out of that team going forward, because that core group of Tamura and all those guys together really deserve to be put back into a situation where they can win a national championship. As far as Arizona State goes, I think when you go to their roster and you go past the names of Doyle, Spinasanta, Cotton, Fry, you have to figure out where from there. And I know they're adding Haveman next semester, this semester. But what is that second line going to do? Like what it's going to really fall on Travis Ringman and Dirks and Lindsey Fry and Haveman and Weinstock to really, if he's going to be in that position. Lombardo, if he's going to be in that position as well. Not sure if that's the case. are they going to be able to elevate their game where they're not a liability on the rink? Is it going to be a situation where that one line of Doyle, Smith, Sandicott, and Fry are going to have to carry the team for 36 minutes? Or is it going to be a situation where that second line is really going to be able to chip in and chip away and be able to be a successful group while they're out on the floor? Because once you get to playing, 8 games in a weekend, you need more than one line to score. You need more than one line to play defense, and you need them to help out in some way other than taking up space on the floor. And I'm not saying that's what ASU's team is doing, but I think the difficulties that you've seen out of ASU this year, when they did lose to Long Beach State in overtime, when they got taken to overtime by Colorado Springs, when they lost 3-7 to UNLV, I think a lot of that comes down to sheer what are their numbers versus your numbers, and I think that's something that that might be an area of concern for that ASU team going into nationals.
Yeah, that Long Beach State game was a tough game for sure. I can say that we definitely were not prepared going into that game and didn't have really the mental mindset, being ready to go out and play hockey. It was the first game of the day, and just, they definitely outplayed us, but I don't necessarily think that we played our best game that day, no doubt. And I think we all knew that, and that's going to be a struggle for ASU for sure, is making sure that they're ready to go and go out and play a consistent game for 3 periods. It's weird to see kind of the matchup against UNLV and ASU. Both times they've played, they've been 4-goal games. So it seems like when one team's ready to go and prepared and they go in with that mindset, they're going to get the win. So really for both those teams, it's going to be being prepared and being able to play their best game against a team like a Newman or Lindenwood if it gets down to that, in the Final Four. How about some teams that we should just keep an eye on briefly that, might make up that Elite Eight or that top 10?
Well, I think you got to look at Farmingdale after that performance that they've had and the performance that they've had all season. They've got this strong goaltending. They got this speedy squad, but they take a lot of penalties. And when I say a lot of penalties, I mean like they take a ton of penalties. They have guys on their roster. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys over with 10 penalty minutes or more. They've been shorthanded 29 times this year. They're only they're killing at about the 69% rate. So I mean, every third power play, you're going to put one home on them, and if they're taking that many penalties, you're likely to get a lot of chances, and it's lost them games, and we've seen that. It lost them the game against Newman late in the game where they took a penalty and then they took 4 minutes worth of penalties right after it. I think they have the ability to really be a strong team. I mean, they coasted through D2 last year, and they're a strong team, but we got to see what they're capable of at the D1 level and really have to make a concerted effort to keeping their heads in the game. I think Michigan State and UMSL are also teams that we can look at. Michigan State we don't know too much about because they haven't really been tested in their region. They haven't gone out of region yet. So it's difficult to really get a look at them. UMSL, they were pretty good last year. They had some ups and downs, especially at nationals, but they beat some very good teams at nationals last year. They've already beaten Bethel once this year, a 5-4 overtime win. Their goaltender, apparently he's pretty solid.
Yeah, Mark Hager. He is he's quite a talent. He's fun to watch. He makes big saves. He'll stop 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s. The kind of plays that you need your goaltender to make to keep you in a game. And he's definitely, when he's on top of his game, he's one of the top goalies in the nation for sure.
Yeah, I think that's solid. That's a solid, solid input. And I wonder if when they get to nationals, they got hell big on this team. Stephen Freund's back. Michael Schubert's on the team and everything. That Hayden Crocker. A lot of very good talent from top to bottom. I wonder if they do have such a solid goalie like Hager, if they don't consider boxing when they get to nationals or when they get to regionals and they have to run up against some of the better teams. I don't know if they're boxing right now. I know they have in the past, even when Marty Woes was there. They did run a box, but they didn't necessarily have this type of goaltending that you've been so adamant about that they have with Hager. So I think that's something that will be something that we'll be looking forward to seeing going on the rest of this semester, at least in the Southeast, or excuse me, the South, not even the South, the Great Plains.
Yeah, definitely. And then in the Southeast, you've got a couple of teams, Kennesaw and also Florida Gulf Coast, who are two interesting teams that both have some talent for sure. Obviously, if Larry Atagoki is there for Kennesaw in the second semester, he wasn't there for them in the first semester. If he is there, him and Brent Sweeney should be able to combine for some big points and be able to keep Kennesaw in some good games. At nationals, definitely at regionals, and obviously at nationals. And I think also Florida Gulf Coast with Peter Phone should also be able to keep Florida Gulf Coast in contention at nationals, and they're gonna have to rely on those guys heavily to make a run for sure.
Right, and I think when with their whole club present, I think you can also look down the line a little bit more. You can see Temple. Temple could be a team that can make some noise. That's in the East. That could be a contender. You could look at Slippery Rock. I think Slippery Rock with some goaltending, they would be a solid team. They did extremely well at nationals last year, but the biggest thing was goaltending. And then you had to go into the gauntlet after a really tough game that they played against Miami of Ohio last year. They had to go into the gauntlet and then play against Lindenwood, who they ended up losing to 15-1. So I think there's some teams that are out there that can definitely chip in and make some noise as the season comes along, and as second semester pickups get pulled into the fold. It'll be for sure interesting to see if Kennesaw does get Larry back in the second semester. But I think once you get out of that top tier of the top four teams in the NCRHA's D1, which it's been like for the last, gosh, how long? 4 or 5 years, maybe all the way back until 2009. Once you get out of that top 4 or 5 teams, everything else is just like is a hodgepodge. Anyone can beat anyone. Anyone can compete with anyone. But once they get into that situation in the Elite Eight or the Final Four, it usually ends up being the big expected teams winning and end up coming out on top.
Right. It's definitely a league of heavy hitters and the favorites, the Goliaths, if you will.
Yes.
When it comes down to the Final Four. So this season is definitely a little different, just in the sense that we've seen all of these teams falter. We don't have any perfect teams anymore. Lindenwood is beaten Newman, and that's Newman's only blemish on the season. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the rest of the way how things shape up. Also want to note Kennesaw has had a really good goaltending performance from a freshman, Hunter Baines. That's something worth noting, and we'll get into some more players to watch. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the freshmen that have been having good seasons and some of the guys to watch out for, the big names later in the semester. Any final thoughts as we kind of wrap up this little recap of the first semester and kind of where we're going into the second semester here?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of wax poetically and think about the future of our teams and of the NCRHA and the future of our sport a little bit. This is really starting to become the last year of the players that the big name players that we've kind of grown up around and kind of matured with. You're going to start to see people like Shane Fox and Berman and all those kind of guys start to leave the league and graduate from their respective institutions and things like that. And I'm really excited about the prospect of seeing teams usher in their new, like Cafone and all those guys too, like we're talking about Schaefer, usher in their younger players and really lead to some longevity in the league. But I think the contribution that these players have made and things like that have contributed to the NCRHA being the most exciting roller hockey on earth for the last 7+ years.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be it's an interesting kind of time in the sport in general, and definitely for the NCRHA, it's going to be up to us to make sure that we keep this league, alive and strong. And it's been extremely exciting and a lot of fun to be a part of the last few years, I know, for myself. And so hopefully, as Coast to Coast, we can provide some resources for teams that are looking to get involved in the league, as we've had quite a few teams that have been on the cusp of getting organized and getting going and just haven't been able to do so. So we're hoping to be able to kind of help on that front a little bit, and as well as make sure that teams don't leave the league that are kind of losing players or at the point where they're afraid that they might not have a team that can compete at the NCRHA level and stuff. And so that's something that we want to be able to help out with. So if you're part of a program, or if you're running a program that is in need of a little assistance or in need of some help, feel free to get in touch with us. Or at the same time, if you're looking to start a program, or somebody that is at a school that doesn't yet have a team, get them in contact with us. That's definitely something that we would like to help out with and be a part of. If you have anything to add to that, I know you've had quite an interesting journey in the league and being able to work with so many different programs.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting, and we'll talk about them in the next broadcast that we do. But it's good to see teams that have had teams at schools, but they've only been clubs, but they haven't been in the NCRHA. Teams like Robert Morris come in, and Villanova, St. Joe's for the last couple years. UPenn, looking across the country, and then looking at Cal Poly Pomona and USD and California come into the league and things like that. Fullerton is back to being a solid team again, and so on and so forth. I think it's really important that we do offer their help in any way we can, whether that's coaching or if you have eligibility and you have grad school. I mean, we look at working out of college. I do a lot of things about retention. This is the most ever in the last, this cohort of graduate students is the most that we've ever seen. So if you only played your junior year or whatever, please do start a team. If you're going to a college that you're going to grad school for, that you don't have a team, start one. Be a leader at those institutions, and carry them through your graduate years, because these are some of the best experiences that you'll have. And I know personally, playing both in undergrad and coaching in grad school and coaching now as a professional, it's good to give back to the league that gives back to you.
Couldn't have been said any better. No doubt. It's important for us to keep the sport alive and well, and to keep the league strong, and hopefully bring in some new faces and allow kids to experience college roller hockey, as so many of you guys listening out there have. So get involved, be a part of it. if you want to get involved with Coast to Coast, as we mentioned earlier in the show, whether it's on the broadcast side of things, or if you want to help out with some marketing of the league, whether it's to high school kids, if you've got, a lot of high school teams and leagues in your area, or even at some of the big tournaments this summer, there's a lot that Coast to Coast kind of encompasses, and we're going to be defining a lot of that and working with a lot of guys over the next few months to make the league strong. So feel free to get in touch with us. You can email us, NCRHA Coast, the number 2 Coast at gmail.com. Twitter is NCRHA_C, the number 2C. We'll have those links up as well as to our website and stuff. We've got rankings coming out later in the week. We'll have a D2 show coming up in the next couple of days as well. And it's a really exciting time as we get really ready to go in the second semester and get ready to head out to Cedar Rapids for nationals in April. Final thoughts. The only thing that I wanted to add is we've got the Alpha Dangle wheel shirts from Wheel RDAC. If you guys haven't heard of Wheel, they are a new roller hockey specific apparel company, which I don't know of any other brand out there that's doing roller hockey stuff specifically. And they've teamed up with Coast to Coast to do the Alpha Dangle wheel shirt. We kind of jokingly started Alpha Dangle Wheel as the roller frat a couple of years ago, the first time we had a Coast to Coast team play NCRHA over the summer. And so we've kind of joked around with that and grown that, and we've got a lot of guys that they claim that they are part of the Alpha Dangle Wheel Frat. So if you go on to wheelrdac.com, you can grab a shirt. They're $20. A portion of the proceeds go to NCRHA Coast to Coast to allow us to do some of the video stuff and some of the cool stuff that we hope to do at nationals if we have the resources to do so. And so if you want to grab a shirt, head to wheelrdac.com. Awesome shirts. They've got some great apparel, and they're also doing some custom team stuff. So if you're interested in that as well, get in touch with those guys. And that's really all I have. We should be back, as I mentioned, in a couple of days with the D2 show. We should have rankings coming out soon, and hopefully a lot more to add as the second semester rolls on. For Ian Prescott, I'm Kevin Smith. We're signing off. We'll see you guys soon. Make sure to get in touch with us over social media. If you've got any thoughts, questions, comments, hit us up, and we will try to address those or answer you either online or in our next show. See ya.